Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Cantey, and this is another episode of Living Enlightened Every Day. Today, we're exploring the phrase, follow your bliss. Have you heard of that? It's a huge part of my life. What motivates me, what gets me going every day is following my bliss. And we're going to explore how to do that when it doesn't feel like there's a choice. It was fun for me last week to find out that Joseph Campbell, it's believed, made that phrase famous in his book, The Power of Myth. I found it in the last chapter of that book called The Mask of Infinity. And the chapter is filled with so many great things. I was highlighting and making notes about what I wanted to talk about, what was inspiring. But when I got to near the end of the chapter, I read this. Each incarnation, you might say, has a potentiality. And the mission of life is to live that potentiality. How do you do it? My answer is follow your bliss. There's something inside of you that knows when you're in the center, that knows when you're on the beam or off the beam. And if you get off the beam to earn a living, to make money, you've lost your life. And if you stay in the center and don't get the money, you still have your bliss. And I live by that phrase. It's a part of a document that I repeat a few times a day to remind me of who I am being. And it reminds me as I repeat this phrase or listen to it or read it, it reminds me of when I am in alignment with who I want to be, who I know myself to be, and when I may be out of alignment. The line in my document reads, I, Elizabeth, follow my bliss, and I am always and infinitely rewarded. My bliss is in the journey, not the results. My bliss is in this moment now. There are some obvious ways to follow our bliss. I mean, if we're in a job that we hate, we know we should start looking for another job, right? I mean, there's some easy things. We know that if we are living in a place that is untenable with roommates or in a situation that is no longer serving us, we know we need to move. Whatever those things are, they're pretty obvious. But what about the not so obvious things? And that's one of the things I want to talk about today. And I'm going to do a series on this because it is so powerful. It has been so powerful in my life, and it still is. And that's why I love to help people love their life and live their passion, because I have found ways in my life to love it regardless of how life is showing up to me. It's like I can love all of it. I can see the bliss in all of it when I bring bliss, right? So I'm going to ask you, as I do most of the time, to, while you're listening to this podcast, just ask yourself, who are you being listening to this podcast? Are you following your bliss? Are you looking for something amazing and wonderful? Because you will find it. Are you in cynicism or in blame or judgment? Because that's what you will see too. We find what we are looking for. What is your heart really looking for? And who are you being right now, this moment? So I just invite you to check in with yourself. Check in and know that right where you are, bliss is, joy is, peace is, wisdom is, it's all there. And maybe something in this podcast will spark a remembrance of that truth that is within you already. When I was 23, I did a life spring training, which was, I believe, don't quote me, a shoot off of the EST training and the forum, what is called the forum now. The forum is still in existence and a wonderful program, but this is no longer. But one of the elements in this training began by asking us what we hated to do. What we really disliked doing. And for me at that time, it was easy. It was laundry. I hated doing the laundry. I was 23 years old, living in an apartment in New York City. And before that, dorms in college. And I often had to grab my laundry and products and go outside in the rain, in the cold, in the heat, in the snow, and go do my laundry. So by that time, I would say I definitely hated it. I had a lot of mental energy around that, and it was just like I dreaded going out and doing laundry. So of course, what would happen? The laundry would pile up, and now the piles are big and it's heavier and it's even more awkward when I have to go do it. So they took us through this process first of asking, what do you like about doing laundry? Well, that was easy. I liked having clean clothes. It seems a little obvious. I liked having a closet full of fresh, clean clothes that I could pick out whatever I wanted to wear whenever I wanted to wear it. And then they asked, well, let's explore your objections. What exactly are your objections? And we were writing this down, by the way. Well, at the time, for those of you who can recall, there were no credit card laundry machines. I don't think there were credit cards or debit cards. And you had to have a big bag full of quarters. So that's a lot of quarters when you had a big pile of laundry. So if you don't have enough quarters to dry everything, then you're taking home wet clothes and hanging them all over your apartment. That just added to my despair over the laundry. They didn't sell laundry products in the places that I would frequent. And so you had to bring your own products, and those were big and bulky at the time. The third thing was, if the washers and dryers were already in use, there was a lot of waiting going on. There could even be people ahead of you waiting. There was not a lot to do at the laundromat. It felt like a really big waste of time because, again, remember, there's no laptop computers or cell phones to flip through or check your emails. And finally, it just wasn't fun, being by yourself in a laundromat, a terribly lit, not terribly clean laundromat, and waiting, endlessly waiting. So then they asked, well, what if you just didn't do that? And we're like, wait, what? Do my laundry? Yeah. What if you don't like to do it? What if you just didn't do it? What are the options? Well, one would be that I could not do my laundry and buy new clothes all the time. Well, that wasn't financially an option for me at the time or now. So it wasn't an option, but I did explore it. I allowed it to come in, be an option, and explore it. I could move into a building that already had a nice laundry facility, and that would alleviate that problem, but they were very much more expensive, or even having laundry in the apartment itself, much more expensive than my pay grade at the time. And I had 6 months left on my lease or so. So it wasn't an option, but I did explore it. I could take my laundry to a nicer neighborhood that had a nicer laundromat, but that meant taking all my clothes and getting in a taxi or a bus or the subway and going to a nicer neighborhood and lugging all my stuff. So that wasn't really an option either, but I did explore it. So now in the process, we began looking at my list of objections about the quarters. If I just made an appointment with myself to go to the bank, and you got to remember in the old days, no ATMs, and banks had this thing called banking hours, which meant they were never open when you wanted to go. So I would make an appointment for myself to go every, Monday morning or whatever fit into my schedule at that time. And I would always get more than enough quarters, even if I didn't spend them that week. I would get more than enough quarters so that at my apartment, I would always have more than enough quarters. So that issue was completely alleviated. The second thing is that I could have one of those rolling baskets or carts, that would help me bring my laundry and product, and it would roll. So whether even if there were steps down the sidewalk, all those things down into the basement if I needed it. And it would mean that I wasn't lugging all this stuff. It would fold up and not take up space in my apartment or even act as a dirty clothes basket, just dumping the dirty clothes right into it, not taking any space in my closet. And thirdly, I could do some research at the laundry facility of choice and just find out which times of day and which days would be more likely to have the machines available so that I could get my laundry done quicker. And I could make a decision with this wonderful cart that I'm bringing to bring books or magazines or a journal or a sketch pad or some project that I was working on. Remember, no computers, no cell phones. So I could bring something that wouldn't make me feel like I was wasting my time, alleviating that problem. And finally, I could invite a friend who lived nearby or, make a plan to do laundry with a roommate and be creative. We could bring a picnic basket or a bottle of Bartles and James, the wine choice of young adults at the time, and make it fun, make it a date. And that would resolve some of those problems. So you can see how with something I hated to do, I began to see how I could really relieve most of those objections that I had, that my mind had created, to the point where I could almost enjoy doing the thing that, here's the key, that I had to do anyway. And that is the key. We're not changing what we have to do to follow our bliss. We are bringing our bliss to whatever it is we have to do, we're called to do, we are responsible to do, and ultimately what we want to do to get the end result, which in this case was clean clothes. This process changed my life at the wonderful ripe age of 23. I learned that I could use this process on anything that I had to do or that my mind had created objection to. The other thing I realized was it was never the thing itself that was objectionable or troublesome or limiting or negative. It was the story that I created around it. It's the thoughts that I created around that event. So when my son was very little, he would wake up very, very early every morning, like 5:30 a.m. And as a single mom, that was pretty difficult. I would say that I hated it, but I had already realized this technique, and I could just ask myself, well, what about this do I like? And my son had a lot of energy. He was very creative. And if that's when he woke up, I wanted to create an environment for him where he could be happy and comfortable, and that would make me happy. So, what were my objections? Well, I always had to make him a snack, some food in order for him to be happy. I had to entertain him somehow so he would be happy. And I was just really, really tired. It just wasn't the time of day that I would have chosen to get up. So early on, I realized I could just have a little bowl of Cheerios already ready for him. I could put on Baby Einstein, which was the cult classic of the time, and I could lay on the couch with my pillow and blanket and maybe get some more sleep or at least rest while my son was very happy. He's singing along, listening to Baby Einstein, which is classical music, by the way. We're not doing Barney at 5:30 a.m. He's happy, and I'm able to get some more sleep or rest. When Joseph Campbell and other mystic traditions are telling us, pointing us to the idea of following our bliss, it doesn't mean that every moment has to be our definition of ecstasy. It means that in every moment, whether it's obligations or responsibilities or leisure time, we can use this questioning to explore and find out, what about this situation can I make more enjoyable? How can I be more peaceful? How can I shine my light onto this, exude my joy into this? How can I get my needs met while fulfilling my obligation or responsibility? And that is following our bliss. We can create anything to be more joyful, more peaceful, more loving, more creative, because that's who we are. That's ultimately who we are. We bring that to every situation, event, and circumstance in our life. Now, you know that I know that there are situations in life that are less than blissful. If we're in a job that no longer serves us, we can say, oh, I can't follow my bliss because I am in a miserable situation at my job. Then we begin to explore, well, what do you like about your job? And if you're like 99% of people, including myself, you'll say, oh, the paycheck. I like the paycheck, especially when I get to go to the bank and deposit my check and then pay for my mortgage and my car insurance and my new shoes. I like having a home and a car and my new shoes. So we focus on what does make us happy. And it doesn't mean that we don't try to change the situation. We can explore using those same questions, looking at what specifically is bringing us those uncomfortable feelings when we're going into work. Is it the drive? Is it the coworkers? Is it our boss? Is it what the environment? Is it someone in particular that's negative? And we start exploring all the options of how we can relieve and alleviate those situations. It doesn't mean we don't try to change. We may be inspired to change jobs or change careers, and that may be what's calling us. Or we may be being called to relieve these objections by finding our bliss in what we already have to do or are doing. Sometimes we say, oh, I just got fired. There's no bliss there. How can I follow my bliss? I just got let go. Well, what is good about getting let go, getting fired? Maybe it's that you can finally take that week or 2 week vacation you've been wanting. Maybe it's that you don't have to work for a month while you look for a new job. Maybe it's that this is the time for you to change careers or vocations, right? It might be that this is an opportunity to get a better job. So whatever it is, we can find our bliss and follow our bliss by asking, exploring, and questioning, who am I being in this situation? If I am being that I am blissful, that I am capable, that I am creative, that I am loving, that I am peaceful, that's what we will bring to resolving these issues in our life. And this is a good one. If we're sitting at home and we had planned to take the kids to the beach today and it starts pouring down rain, how many people are so upset at the weather? I can't follow my bliss. The weather isn't cooperating, as if that was the only thing ever that you could do that would be joyful with your kids, right? It's, the weather isn't cooperating. We explore, where is our bliss anyway? It's always within. There's nothing out there that can take away our bliss, including the weather, the traffic, the coworkers, the in-laws, the ex-boyfriend, the situations and events that are unplanned, like the diagnosis. We can find our bliss in each and every moment by exploring and maybe reframing what our bliss is and where it lies. If we think that all the things out there in the world of effects have to align for us to follow our bliss, to stay in our center, then we are going to be extremely unblissful a lot. Our bliss, just like unconditional love and peace and joy, is within, and it is our birthright. Joy is our true nature. And for me, it's always important to distinguish that we use words like bliss and the peace that passes all understanding, and joy and unconditional love. And they're these great big concepts, and they're all the same. They're all this quality of our God self, our highest self. But it is our personality, our human personality, that decides if we're going to call it joy in this minute, or peace in this minute, or unconditional love in this minute. It's all the same, though. And I believe that the key to everything in life is summed up by this ancient pointer in every mystic tradition: to follow our bliss. When we are in love or in joy or peace, we're attracted and we are attracting that which mirrors us. And when the things show up in our life that are not mirrors to what we think we are, being joyful, blissful, peaceful, unconditionally loving, then even those things cannot move us off our center, knock us off the beam, because we are grounded in spirit, in the truth of our being, and not in our perception of the world of effects that is coming to us on this great big virtual reality screen. We quiet the voices in our head when we explore the one that says, this is terrible, this is, untenable, I can't stand when this happens, I don't like when that happens, I never get this to go right, I never seem to have this. All those are thoughts. They're thoughts about something. They're not the thing itself. When we learn to just release the thoughts, explore the joy, we can see joy, and we allow the negativity, the dislike, the hate of doing something or being responsible for something, we allow it to just dissolve in our bliss, in our love, or in our peace. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer when I was pretty young, and I knew, for some reason, I absolutely knew in my heart, this was to point me to the fact that I am not my body. And again, at 24, I became a seeker of this truth that had eluded me in my Catholic upbringing. I was no longer satisfied with it's God's will, that God up there, out there, an infinite distance from myself. I wanted to know the meaning of life, my life, before my life in this body as this being ended. So if I had not been diagnosed then, I don't know that I would have ever found this deep and profound meaning in my life, because I was ignoring the other signs, the other explorations that I had. And I know people who have had different diagnoses that have moved them into their spiritual path, or a greater expression of who they are as a fulfilled being, having a human existence, a spiritual being having their human existence. So no, that does not look like bliss. Getting a diagnosis of stage 2 cervical cancer. There's no bliss in receiving the diagnosis or searching for the second opinions or having the surgeries. I get it. And yet, as we are able to look back on our lives, sometimes in weeks or months, sometimes in years, it takes a certain maturity. But when we can look back, almost everyone I know, myself included, can say that was absolutely for my highest good. And once we have that trust that there is a higher good for me, regardless of circumstances, then it becomes very easy to find our bliss. It is within and mirrored back to us in the situations and events. We can explore things like a diagnosis or a sudden responsibility that we weren't, we would have never said that. There's my bliss right there. Caring for someone who is diseased or disabled. But when we explore and allow ourselves to live in our bliss while we are attending to that which we are called to do, we find it's right there, it's right here, it's within, it's who and what we are. We are the instruments of love, peace, and joy, and we're always called to bring that to the situations, events, circumstances, relationships, every single thing, every single person, every little thing that comes into our life is asking for our blessing. We can bring our joy to it or to them, right? As I said last week, we are born of woman, but we are reborn as spiritual man, as spiritual woman. We are perfect, whole, and complete, regardless of circumstances. There's only one life, one source, and we share it. And the purpose of this life is to follow, to be guided by, to allow, and to accept bliss, our bliss, all the time, which means we can follow it at any given moment. It may take an exploration. It may take some questioning. What in your life needs questioning? If you are spending a certain amount of time in negativity, question that. If you are spending a certain amount of time feeling uninspired, question that. Know that your bliss is right where you are. Sit down with someone and just say, hey, give me a hand with these questions. You know, I can't seem to find the good or the God in this. We all need that help, which is why we have each other. So I invite you this week to explore what it means for you to follow your bliss. There's the obvious. We'll talk about that too. But then there's the not so obvious, the things that we have to do that don't feel necessarily blissful. How can we bring the truth of our being into that which we're called to do anyway? Let me know how that goes for you this week. So I invite you to laugh, love, and live in bliss this week for sure. And if you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. You'll get the next video. You'll know when it is, and share it with a friend. I'm sure someone out there is not really understanding how they can really follow their bliss. You'll have some insights for them. I'm Elizabeth Cantey, and you can find out more about me at my website, elizabethcantey.com. I am coaching now one-on-one, and I have a coaching program as well. Thank you.